All right, I've got 5:45, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If everyone would stand for a moment of silence and then the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Madam Recorder, if you'd call the roll. Present.
Present. Here.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Mr. Superintendent, would you lead us through our agenda?
Well, the first item on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment.
Would anyone from the public like to speak? Hearing none. Next item.
Next item is the reports section, starting with the chairman's welcome.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our September business meeting. It's a odd time for us to be meeting on a Tuesday, but with the holiday, it is appropriate and was regularly scheduled. So this is our regularly scheduled September business meeting. We are closing in or approaching, I guess, a little over halfway or about halfway of the first 9 weeks. And while COVID has made some things challenging on our teachers and staff, everything seems to be going about as well as one could expect. We certainly appreciate the effort and energy that our staff and faculty has put into this semester so far. I am planning on throughout tonight's meeting, as I get updates on the soccer game. Our Lady Lions are playing Munford tonight, and I'm told right now the score is 1-1. So I may interrupt tonight's meeting at certain times with breaking soccer news. But that concludes my report, and Mr. Superintendent, would you lead us through the rest of our agenda?
Next item in the report section is the TLN representative update.
There's no update.
Okay. Next item is the superintendent's report. We have two financial reports just because of the timing of the previous meetings. You have before you both the July financial summary and the August financial summary. We are relatively early, obviously, into this school year. There's not anything that leaps out at those. There's a couple of expenditures that happen right off the bat and would appear to make the percentages over the year maybe look concerning, including the annual payments that we make to Arlington Community Schools. But everything else is right in line.
Any questions for the superintendent? Hearing none. Next item.
That was the financial report. I do have my regular superintendent's report to give. Board members, you have before you the internal school funds audit. These are the annual audits that are done basically of the student activity funds at the two schools, Lakeland Elementary and Lakeland Preparatory School. We are delighted to report that Judy Carpenter at Lakeland Elementary School had what we call a perfect audit with no findings. We did have several findings at Lakeland Preparatory School, I think 5 to be exact. These were all basically just procedures that got missed in the selections that were made by the auditor. There are corrective actions included, and it is now incumbent on the principal and the financial secretary to make sure that those things are corrected. There was nothing, just to be clear, that doesn't indicate that there was any, certainly fraud or anything that was untoward like that. However, there are some procedures that need to be cleaned up, and we will certainly take those seriously and hope to come back next year with clean audits at both schools. But they are there for your review. And there's no board action on this one required.
I'll just add, these were provided to us tonight, so if the board would like to review them and get with the superintendent individually or something we can bring up at our next business meeting, that would be fine. Carry on, Dr. Horrell.
Thank you. I wanted to give just an update on the COVID-19 case numbers in the schools. The state of Tennessee is going to resume their COVID reporting dashboard that we participated in all of last year, and I do intend to, it is optional, but I intend to participate in that again this year as well. They said it would start after Labor Day, so I'm not sure if that's, now I'm starting to think that may mean next Monday to be the first full week, but I can share some numbers with you. From the start of the year at LES, We have had 42, and this is not up to the day. We wind up having a reporting week that ends on Wednesday, so this is from last Wednesday. We had 42 new cases at LES, 38 cases at LPS. The quarantine numbers is kind of where we've had the most challenges, I think, for the start of school, where we had a lot more students identified as close contacts than basically is practical in terms of keeping the school going. So we have made some adjustments to our distancing in the schools and to certain procedures, and have worked closely with the principals who are now working with the teaching staff, basically just to try to mitigate that. Our goal obviously is to keep not only the schools open, but to keep as many of the students in school as we possibly can. So we had last year, over the course of the year, we had 434 students that were identified as close contacts. And I always point this out, either at school or through community or home contacts. So these numbers that I'm using are students that for one reason or another have to stay at home because of being close contact. Last year on the year, we had 434. We have already had, based on this last report, 359. So obviously we kind of hit the ground running on the quarantines and are basically kind of working hard to adjust to that right now as we speak. Now, I do want to note an interesting statistic. Of those 359 that were quarantined this year, only 8 of the students we sent home wound up developing COVID. So only 2% of the students that were identified as close contacts wound up developing COVID-19. That's in contrast to 0.4% of all of our students that have developed COVID-19 in school. So we actually have had more students get diagnosed with COVID in the general population than among the group that it was supposedly, I don't want to say supposedly, but identified as being the most at risk. So we certainly continue to take quarantining and contact tracing very seriously, but also at the same time we are making adjustments that we hoped we wouldn't have to make in the schools to reduce that number. And in some cases that impacts how the teachers do their job. So as Chairman Floyd noted, I also am very grateful for the energy, the innovation, and the flexibility that our teaching staff have shown so far. That is kind of its own standalone thing. Are there any questions about at this point?
Any questions for the superintendent on this topic? Hearing none, carry on.
Okay. I want to give a general update on another situation that is, well, I dare say has impacted nearly as many people, and that's the transportation situation this year in our school system. We are, in addition to the COVID challenges, we are also being challenged by a driver shortage that is not specific to the municipalities. It is not local to Shelby County. It is actually a nationwide shortage of bus drivers. Durham is a major player in the transportation industry. As I've noted to the board, it's not at all atypical to have problems at the start of the year with transportation and with routes and with timing and things like that. But what we have right now is much deeper than that. It is a lack of people to do the job. And in past years, Durham has been able to fly drivers in from out of state. We've flown drivers in, for example, from Minnesota to start the year while they had time to build up the pipeline, and Minnesota specifically because school tends to start later in that part of the country and in other parts of the country. This year, there are not drivers to be found, and when they are being found, we then have the delay of getting their CDL licenses and getting them trained, and then some of those that go into the pipeline don't wind up making it. So long story short, I do want to apologize to the parents and to the community members for the frustration that I know they're experiencing. Many of you on the board that have kids in the schools are experiencing that. We are leveraging our contract with Durham in every way that we possibly can to hold Durham accountable for the issues that we've had with the buses. However, there's only so far that can go. Unfortunately, even financial penalties leveraged at Durham don't put bus drivers in the driver's seat. So this is something that we continue to struggle with, and we're certainly looking to see if there are options that would be better for our school system moving forward. But again, this, personally, if there's any comfort in it, this is not just a Lakeland issue. This is like COVID. This is a national issue that people are struggling with everywhere. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating, and I acknowledge that. And I also want to say that the parents, for the most part, have been unbelievably understanding of the situation. And the school-based staff have worked very hard to make sure that at the least communication is good and parents have a sense of when there are delays and what to expect. So that is also its own situation, and I'll pause after that if there are any questions.
Thomas.
That's a very good question. So the other thing that is a factor, and I think in some cases it's perceived as being the main factor, and we found that we don't believe it is the main factor. Durham used to be the only show in town, and it serviced Shelby County Schools and all the municipalities. Shelby County Schools, who is the larger, obviously, customer, did not renew with Durham, and First Student has started serving Shelby County Schools. And it is true that First Student is paying bus drivers more. So we did lose some bus drivers to First Student, which has made it even more challenging. However, our understanding is First Student is also suffering from a severe driver shortage. So, I mean, even with the higher pay, they have not been able to get enough drivers to drive the routes. We, as a municipal school system consortium, negotiated a 4% increase for this year. So we felt strongly that, and feel strongly that Durham could offer higher wages to meet the contract, but that would be at their prerogative and at their discretion.
Any other questions on this topic for the superintendent? Is there any end in sight? Is there hope that this may improve, or is this just a waiting game at this point?
I think there's always hope. I think we're hoping that Durham assures us that they are recruiting, doing everything that they know to do and can do to recruit. They are assuring us that there are more drivers in the pipeline that that on a delayed schedule might on board. I'll also note, and we'll see if there's any. I don't want to make a claim of causality, but some of the federal benefits that I think were leading to a lot of the service industry staffing shortages are expiring. It's possible that might have more people to look for jobs like transportation. So at this point, I don't have a good answer, but I'm hopeful, I suppose.
Very good. Dr. Hurl, you may continue with your report.
Thank you. I want to give a real estate update. We have exercised our option on a piece of property that we've discussed and the board approved in the Meadows subdivision. So now there are some option clauses, I guess, for the option. So we've got the owner, we've got the option holder, and then we exercised an option with the option holder. And now the option holder, who is Doug Swink, has some time to do his own due diligence and make the final decision about moving forward with the deal. So we have been, based on our due diligence, we feel like, and that we being Dr. Mitchell and I with our partners at Renaissance Group, we still feel like it is a good and appropriate piece of property for a future elementary school. And we're hopeful that the deal would be completed. If it is, though, closing would probably not be until November if all goes well. So when all the contractual kind of triggers happen, there is kind of a slow roll after our decision point that might make that until at least November. But we're still hopeful on that. The other piece of property that the board approved us to move on was the old Brownsville property, and we have about 20 more days during our due diligence period for that one. Even though that was the second property we identified and the due diligence is going longer, if we do exercise our option to buy that property, then that closing would come about much faster, actually. So it's possible that if everything goes well, that we would close on the old Brownsville property before the Meadows property. I want to give an enrollment update, even though it's not a very dramatic one. At LPS, currently after the first 20 days, which is the period in which we kind of measure attendance and 20-day reports. We've got 849 students at LPS, and our first day of school number was 850. So we're right about where we were. There hasn't been a dramatic swing either way on that. At LES, we started the school with 989 students, and we now have 987. Again, a lot of times we have experienced that we get a big rush afterwards. That doesn't seem to be the case, and it also doesn't seem to be the case that we've lost the number of students for any reason. We are working hard with Ms. Decker and Ms. Manthe and Mr. Adler on the creation of the high school course catalog and course selection options, and that is ongoing and it's progressing, and their team has met with every member of the 8th grade class. They've been meeting in small groups. They did some surveying that the board is aware of, and right now the plan is to have an early pre-registration that would basically kind of be a dry run on registration, a non-binding registration that we would possibly do in November, as soon as November, and give those 8th graders and their parents the opportunity to choose. If you were registering right now, what would you pick? And also, that would be an education opportunity for the parents and for the students to say, let us answer your questions, so that we're not doing it in the middle of kind of the high-stakes registration period that usually is in January or so. We'll feel good about that and the work that that team is doing to get ahead on that. And then finally, I wanted to give just a brief construction update. Everyone's main concern is, will we be ready for the football games on Saturday? And we will, even though the track will not be complete. They are expecting to pour the concrete around the track the end of this week. But regardless, the players will be able to pass over the unfinished track and get to the field of play. We do have the new scoreboard installed and operational. We have moved the head of the announcing and audio center from the visitors press box over the home side press box, which is spacious and luxurious, as you can imagine. And so we're very excited to have fans in the bleachers of those really nice the home side bleachers there. I do want to note we are looking a little tight right now, I think, in terms of the back area, the area furthest south of the building. There's some areas there where the foundation has not been poured yet. At this point, we're told, we don't need to panic yet, but I'd say we have some concerns about whether or not that's all going to be dried in, and as it should be, time to complete all the finishes for the start of school next year. Now, to be specific, that's the area with the new band room, the new choir room, the new orchestra room, and some of the wrestling areas specifically. And what I want to be clear about is, even if, for some reason, those are not trimmed out, complete, and ready to be occupied, that would not impact the starting of school. We would still be able to start school. There are no issues with the gym. There are no issues with the auditorium. There are no issues with the administrative wing. There are no issues with the classroom wing. We are talking about some specific areas that I think at most would cause inconvenience. And again, that's even if that comes to pass. But I do want to just put that out there to be fair. Every time I come here, I say I don't think there are any issues with the timeline for construction. And as of right now, there are no issues with the timeline of construction, but there are areas we're taking a close look at.
Dr. Hurl, I know you do a good job of representing us in this meetings, but just so you can go to the next meeting and say, we expect that to be done all complete by the first day of school. So you can feel free to pass that on to whoever needs to hear it.
I will be happy to pass that on behalf of the Shelby, the Lakeland School Board. Yeah. I believe it's June 15th. I'd have to check that.
And I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you have anything else?
That concludes my report.
Any questions for the superintendent? Mr. Burnett.
I know we talked about doing another walkthrough. I'd love to do that, and then also invite the BOC, because I know that there are a couple of BOC members who are also interested in doing a walkthrough.
I'd be, especially with the weather we've had lately, I'd be happy to get something scheduled.
Ms. Childs.
What's the holdup with that part?
coordination, it's different area. It is a tight site, and there's certain things that they can't do until they do other things, because that area, if the foundation is poured, they can't access other parts of the site through that area, is my understanding of what it is. So it's just a matter of sequencing. At some point, that being kind of the last of the priorities, I guess, and they could turn it around and absolutely get that poured and dried in and not, but little right now, just a little. I'll say this, Chris Woods Construction has never missed a deadline for us, and I know their intention is to not do that. So I don't want this to come across as indictment of them, because it hasn't even happened. I'm just saying that area. It's a fair question, and here we're watching very closely.
Any other questions for the superintendent? Before we move to the next item, our Lady Lions are up 3-1 in their soccer game against Mufford.
The Lions.
So, Dr. Horrell, next item.
Next item is the approval of the agenda.
The agenda is before the board. Are there any additions or subtractions from the agenda? Any changes? Hearing no changes, we'll approve without objection. We'll approve the agenda as is. Next item.
Next item is, as we move to the discussion items, first is the discussion of the minutes, the business meeting minutes from August 9th, 2021.
This is a business meeting, so I'll need a motion to get this item on the floor.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on policy 4.213, family life education.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. This is our second reading. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on policy 4.600, grading system.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. And I'm going to interrupt one more time with breaking news. The Lady Lions won. It is over. They won 3-1 over Munford.
Wow. Terrific. Congratulations.
So, sorry about that, Madam Recorder. We do have a motion and a second, so the item's properly before the board. Any discussion on this item?
Yes, if I may, this was a true discussion item in that there were some questions at the last meeting about the existing policy where students are only given the opportunity to be exempt from exams during the second semester of a high school course, of which we have 3 at the middle school, and then obviously we'll have several starting next year. The questions tended to focus on could we exempt students from the first semester if we so choose? Is there any reason not to? I didn't know the answer to that at the time, but the answer appears to be that yes, school systems can if they choose to. And I think the related questions are, why is it only offered during the second semester and not during the first semester? And the best answer that I can come up with just seems to be giving the students those experiences of taking exams, that we know that they'll wind up taking exams in college and in other settings. Having that second semester motivation allows them to be done for the year a bit earlier, and doesn't complicate attendance and things as much as a first semester exam. So the answer is the board does have the opportunity, if they would like to discuss that. I know Ms. Harrison, who is not here, I did speak with her individually about it because she had kind of initiated the questions, and my understanding from her is that she's not interested in pushing it. She just wanted to know. So it's there. We could bring it up next month again if anybody chose to, or really at any point, as you know. But right now, there's not a recommendation for an amendment to this.
Discussion on this item? Ms. Thomas?
Exemption is, just to be clear, is only the exam that the teacher gives for his or her course and not the EOC. The EOC has to be taken by all students at the end of the course, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, I'm sorry, Mr. Burnett.
Guys, last minute. And I know we discussed that at some point you'll bring this one back for us to add in last grade band, the high school grade band grading policy. Do you know when we might see that? Not pushing, I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, the high school grading, you mean?
Oh, yeah, so
through
right now we're
12.
talking about the policy as we've passed it already is the 1 through 5 and 6 through 8.
Yes, now my understanding is that the board intends to have the same grading scale for high school, which is,
And you had said that there are a few things that you had to work through procedurally about things like advanced placement and honors and
I'm sorry, yes, that is a different policy.
Right,
That's
okay.
a
Yeah, I think
totally
you said
different
it would
policy.
be,
Yes.
different.
Okay.
Question, Mr. Burnett. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Discussion only?
We actually don't need to, that's because we're not recommending any change.
Okay. Very good. Well, then we have discussed it, so we will move to the next item.
Right, the next item is discussion action on policy 4.602, honor roll awards and class ranking.
A motion to get this item on the floor? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
This one actually is a new policy, so if you look online, everything is highlighted on this one. Specifically, we want to make sure that we got the questions answered about class ranking. There are different ways to look at class ranking. We discussed this with the high school team and administration at the school, and basically it's not very complicated, but these questions are questions that do come up at a later date, and basically says that all grades earned in high school through the first semester of grade 12 shall be counted towards the grade point average and the rank in the class, and that it is a requirement to become valedictorian or salutatorian that a student must be enrolled in the high school at least 3 of the 5 semesters preceding the final semester. There's also some additional language about honor roll and awards and contests, which are basically just edited from the recommended language, and seem like it could be good to have in policy as well.
Any discussion on this item? This is a first reading. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll carry this item for a second reading over to our next agenda. Next item.
Next item, discussion action on update to policy 5.3052, COVID-19 administrative leave.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor? We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
Yes, we considered this at a previous meeting and had a pretty robust, the board had a robust discussion about the options as to who this might apply to. At this point, based on several things, I think based on Mr. Plumley's feedback and really based on our own experiences, I would at this point not recommend making any sort of distinction between vaccinated and unvaccinated in terms of leave. I don't believe there's an appetite for that either. It was merely just presented as an option for discussion. And so basically what this leaves of the policy is that employees get 8 days of paid sick leave if they cannot work due to receiving a positive COVID-19 diagnosis. So that would be the only reason the first semester of this school year that would be allowed. The board would then have the opportunity to this through the end of the year if it still seemed applicable.
Any discussion on this item? Childs?
This is just any staff who has a positive diagnosis, not a close contact.
Correct.
Okay.
This would not apply to close contacts. It would not apply to providing care for someone else who has COVID-19. This would only be the employee themselves.
Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next item is discussion action on update to policy 6.200, attendance.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
Yes, this was actually, this was another policy rather that Ms. Harrison had initiated. I have talked through this with her as well, and we came up with some language that I think meets at least her desires for the policy, so I would bring that to the board. And some of this is, I think, is just clarifying the situation and also taking out things that aren't necessarily part of practice. So what this says now is students will be allowed one additional day regarding makeup work, one additional day for each excused absence to complete makeup work tests or other assignments that were due during their absence. And we took out the section about things that were assigned prior to the absences being completed or turned in the day the student returns from school. There seemed to be some confusion over that and how that might be applied. And I took out based on extraordinary circumstances, so we're just wind up reading requests for exceptions shall be made first to the classroom teacher and then to the principal. So I do think this tightens up that paragraph, and Mr. Adler and Ms. Lockhart both felt good about it.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on approval of school support organization cooperative agreements.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor? We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell, can we take both of these at the same time?
I think that's fine. I think traditionally you guys have done them one at a time, but I think either way is acceptable.
I think we did them all at the same time this time,
I'm sorry.
the previous meeting.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe in the past we've done them one at a time. So we'll take them both at the same time. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on approval of FY22 ESSER 3.0 application.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
Yeah, so what you actually have before you is just the approval sheet itself, but all of the information from the ESSER applications are on the Lakeland School System website. I know I've called the board's attention to that as well. There are a number of public-facing documents that anyone can examine related to not only ESSER 3.0, but ESSER 1 and 2.0. And in addition, the board has previously approved the budgets and the federal programs line items for ESSER 1, 2, and 3.0. So this is a requirement that the Board of Education basically sign off on what is out there in the community, what you have reviewed, and what you have previously approved from a budget standpoint.
Is there any discussion on this item? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on update to 21-22 protected reading list.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on update to 21-22 school fees.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor? We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
This adds fees for boys lacrosse, fall tennis, and spring tennis.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on approval of COVID-19 response coordinator job description.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Dr. Horrell?
So this is essentially a new job description, even though it falls within the coordinator category, of which the board has already approved the salary schedule. We did want to bring this job description to the board. This position is posted but has not been hired.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is discussion action on the preliminary legislative agenda.
Is there a motion to get this item on the floor? We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second from Ms. Childs. Any discussion on this item?
I can kind of set this up. This is a placeholder on the annual agenda that basically just gives the board the opportunity to kind of start thinking about or discussing, if you like, priorities for the next legislative agenda, but I'll let Ms. Childs kind of take it from there.
Okay, so I sent you the agenda that we most recently had for you to look over. And just to give you an update to that agenda, fortunately, there were a few things that were accomplished through the legislature. The Tennessee licensure, most of that was actually passed and accomplished as far as the out-of-state teachers and the increased flexibility about retired teachers. The part that basically died on the vine was the alternative licensure. So I'm sure most of us or all of us would probably want to continue that. And I think it seemed to have support. It just, there was so many other things that just didn't make it.
And if I remember right, mentioned there was a fiscal element attached to this, to the tune of $1 or $2 million to hire staff to build processes for the alternative licensure. I think that was what I heard on the vine this year, but they would revisit it. So I would almost say let's switch it from teacher licensure to alternative licensure and then keep it on.
So, yeah, I believe, I'll have to look back, but I believe it had a bill in both houses, but it just didn't get done. On the virtual learning, that was accomplished as far as that there be, I mean, they could change it again, but at least right now, there was, at this point, virtual learning can occur, and it does include not just students individually being out for COVID or a class, but it does indeed include homebound education, alternative school education, and other circumstances. So that part did get included on the, and there was a bit of talk about mental health, but it didn't really get funded. There was $250 million that was going to be a trust, but then it was only going to be a small amount, and so that part really didn't get done. I did read recently that the BEP panel is recommending for like the first time ever there be like more nurses and counselors, but again, another recommendation, it hasn't actually come to pass yet. Anything else on here that you're aware of that did get approved?
I don't have it right in front of you, but not from my review when I looked at it today.
Okay.
Nothing stood out that.
Any comments or discussion on this item? Probably what we need to do moving forward is just have a placeholder. Eventually, we will need to agree on a legislative agenda, and we probably need to do that by probably the November meeting, certainly December, because they'll start working on their legislative priorities probably November, December-ish, even though session doesn't start till January.
I think in terms of process, any board member that, if you want to review that and send your comments to me, and then I'll work with Ms. Childs to make sure that she gets the information, just so we're following proper protocol. But I do appreciate Ms. Childs bringing this up so early, because it's obvious there's some edits we could go ahead and make and probably be pretty close to, what our normal are.
And just to note, TSBA has not put theirs out yet. I'm not exactly sure when they do, but I feel like they're a little bit behind us, unfortunately. Like theirs is like right before everything is.
I believe theirs comes out after the convention,
Yeah,
which
'cause
is
we go to the delegate.
October-ish, yeah.
Okay.
Now, what they will ask for, which sometimes I think we've kind of been caught on, they'll ask if there are any resolutions. So that's the other thing, if a board member,
Right.
outside of the legislative agenda, if there's something that we feel strongly enough about, usually that's the category of something we do a standalone resolution request.
Good. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. Dr. Hurl, next item, please.
Next item is review of policy manual, section 1.
This is a placeholder. Are there any policies in section 1 that anyone would like to discuss or bring up?
Don't have anything at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. And as always, a board member can bring up any policy at any time. So if there is one that happens to be important to you, we certainly can get that on our agenda at our next business meeting. Next item.
Next item, we move to announcements.
Are there any announcements?
I will announce, just to remind the board, I'll be at the annual superintendent's conference the first part of next week. Actually leave over the weekend, and we'll be back on Thursday of next week.
Know that we have a full schedule of homecoming activities this week. It's homecoming, and I see the soccer team played tonight. I believe the volleyball team plays Thursday at home, and the football team plays Saturday at home. So, and I may be leaving something out, but those are lots of opportunities to go see our Lions play sports this week. Any other business that needs to come before the board? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.